Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presta Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchikalpatarubhyas cha kripa sindubhya eva cha Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so where are we? What? Okay. Wow. You have great insight. On Prabhupada's last day in Allahabad, a Mr. Gorkishore visited him in his tent, inviting him to Benares as chairman of the 45th annual festival commemorating Lord Chaitanya's visit to Benares. Mr. Gorkishore wanted Prabhupada to attend the festival as the honored guest. When Prabhupada said he felt ill and that perhaps some of his disciples could go in his stead, Mr. Gorkishore persisted until Prabhupada finally agreed. But first, Prabhupada wanted to visit Gorakhpur. How did you guess? Gorakhpur, February the 3rd, 1971. The Arada Kumbh Mela over, some devotees went to Delhi, some to Bombay, and others to Calcutta. Prabhupada and the remaining devotees went to Gorakhpur, a 10-hour journey on the antiquated meter-gauge railway. It's probably a steam engine. Prabhupada had been invited by his only disciple in Gorakhpur, Dr. R.P. Rao, now Ramananda, a research chemist who had met Prabhupada in San Francisco, taken initiation in 1967, and since returned to his family and 4 children to teach chemistry at Gorakhpur University. Prabhupada and his disciples moved into crowded quarters at Ramananda's modest home, and about 100 people attended Prabhupada's lecture that evening. Prabhupada already had plans for a Radha Krishna temple on the Gorakhpur University campus, as well as accredited courses and degrees in Krishna consciousness, BA, MA, and PhD. He envisioned graduates going out to teach Krishna consciousness in schools, colleges, and temples all over the world. He inspired Ramananda and a group of his friends to form a committee to introduce Krishna consciousness within the university, and he initiated about 12 disciples. Since they all professed to be following the rules against illicit sex, intoxication, and gambling, and had been lifelong vegetarians, he waived the usual 6-month trial period. He asked them to chant 16 rounds daily and to make their city Krishna conscious. In his absence, they would maintain Ramananda's home as an active ISKCON center and try to establish courses in Krishna consciousness at the university. Benares, February the 6th, 1971. Mr. Gorkishore was counting heavily on Prabhupada's participation in the upcoming celebration. The climax of the week-long observance of Lord Chaitanya's visit to Benares would be a parade, Mr. Gorkishore said. And Prabhupada and his disciples had an important part in it. Newspaper articles, handbills, and loudspeaker carts had announced throughout the city the presence of Srila Prabhupada and his quote-unquote foreign disciples. The devotees sensed they were being treated like entertainers, expected to perform as if under contract, but without salary. On the day of the procession, Prabhupada rode in a silver chariot, the kind customarily used in extravagant wedding processions. The chariot was pulled by a pair of white horses, wearing silver crowns and decorative blankets. The leading float in the parade bore a 6-foot statue of Lord Chaitanya in yellow neem wood. Next followed a file of decorated elephants. One elephant carried a banner reading, Harir Nam Eva Kevalam. One carried actors dressed as Lord Ram and Sita. Another carried 2 actors dressed as Radha and Krishna, who waved to the crowds, and another a picture of Lord Chaitanya and his associates performing Sankirtan. Next came a decorated flatbed truck with children portraying Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, dancing and chanting and dancing. Then followed a series of professional kirtan groups, and Prabhupada's quote-unquote foreign disciples dancing and performing kirtan. Behind the devotees, Srila Prabhupada rode in his chariot. On either side of the chariot walked a devotee fanning Prabhupada with a chamara whisk, while Prabhupada sat with his right hand. Where was his right hand? You're disqualified. His left hand on his cane, in his bead bag, yeah. He was dressed in silk with pearl buttons on his kurta. A wide patch of sandalwood paste covered his forehead. He didn't wave or smile or turn to see the crowds, but sat calmly, chanting Hare Krishna on his beads. Following Prabhupada's chariot was a Shanai group, several more kirtan parties, and finally another statue of Lord Chaitanya, carried by 8 men. The festival committee said 300,000 attended, double what they would have had without Prabhupada and his what? Foreign disciples. The procession was over, however, and as the star attraction, Prabhupada had made his appearance and drawn a large crowd, and now nothing more was required. He and his disciples were taken to a nearby dharamshala and served a feast. Prabhupada remained grave and as soon as possible returned to his quarters and his regular schedule. A student at the University of Benares who had met Prabhupada at the Allahabad Mela stopped by to visit. The boy's father had given him a biography of Lord Caitanya as a gift for Prabhupada. And when the boy showed Prabhupada a picture of his father, Prabhupada said, "Yes, your father is a devotee. So why don't you also take initiation?" The boy was hesitant. As he walked with Prabhupada in the garden, Prabhupada said, "You have got the seed of devotional service from your father, so you must now cultivate." "But how can I shave my head?" the boy inquired. "I'm a university student." Yes. "No," Prabhupada said, "no, it is a custom. You should shave once, and then you can keep short hair." "But how can I wear tilak? They will laugh at me." Prabhupada said the boy should not fear criticism. He should become a soldier of Krishna. Just as the government honors its valiant soldiers, Krishna rewards a devotee who accepts difficulties and criticism on his behalf. "But what about Guru Dakshin?" the boy asked. "Guru Dakshin is just a formality," Prabhupada said. "It was a custom in olden days that when someone gets initiation, he goes to the various homes. It is a sign that you have become a servant of your Guru. You are prepared to beg alms for your Guru. It is whatever you give." The boy returned home and told his father. The next day was an auspicious day, his father said, the appearance day of Lord Nityananda, a good day to receive spiritual initiation. So the next day on Nityananda Trayodasi, Srila Prabhupada initiated the boy, giving him the name Niranjan Das. Now there are two. One is the sannyasi, famous sannyasi. The other one, who I used to know very well. He's Indian. He was studying in Scotland when I joined the temple. Very nice devotee. So, when Prabhupada asked Niranjan if he had any questions, Niranjan said he wanted to know his eternal relationship with Krishna. Was it as servant, as friend, as parent? Prabhupada replied that servitude was the common ground in all transcendental relationships with Lord Krishna. By chanting Hare Krishna, Niranjan would become more and more purified and realize more and more his relationship with Krishna. Niranjan asked how he would understand his relationship. "No, don't jump. You have some shraddha, faith, from your father, and now you're associating with devotees and chanting. Gradually you will realize." Niranjan agreed to be patient. Prabhupada asked Niranjan to arrange a lecture for him on campus, and Niranjan, with the help of his uncle, a philosophy professor, got Prabhupada a speaking engagement for his last morning in Benares. On the day Prabhupada was to leave, he met with John Grieser, the American philosopher, the American photographer, traveling with him and his party since Surat, John, who had shaved his moustache and thought a lot about his future, came to say goodbye until Bombay, when they would meet again in a few weeks. John found Prabhupada in the courtyard, enjoying the sunshine and eating gur, date sugar, from a clay pot. Prabhupada asked that the pot be broken and distributed to John and the other devotees present. And while John sat licking gur from a piece of clay pot, Prabhupada talked about his boyhood in Calcutta. John. Prabhupada was talking in his accented, rhythmic English about his boyhood days in Calcutta, and he described a gracious city before the crowding and squalor of today. Yeah. As a schoolboy, he had seen splendid Victorian buildings of white marble, surrounded by stately lawns and trees. Suddenly Prabhupada looked over at me and laughed. "So, John," he said, "I think Krishna has captured you." I agreed I had known it for quite a while, but now Srila Prabhupada confirmed it. When Prabhupada was leaving Benares to return to Gorakhpur, many of his disciples went to the wrong train station. While Prabhupada and a few followers waited at the correct train station, Kausalya asked him, "How did you like it here in Benares, Srila Prabhupada?" "It is all right," he said indifferently. "Did you have a nice rest?" she asked, trying to think of some positive aspect of the visit. "Rest I can have any time," said Prabhupada, "but I like to be with my devotees." Surrounded by luggage, Prabhupada sat on the bench, while Tamal Krishna and Shamsundar ran from the ticket office to the train and back. The train would leave soon, but where were the other devotees? Prabhupada watched as his spiritual sons argued with the conductor, telling him the train couldn't go until the other devotees arrived. "They do not know what they are doing," Prabhupada said, and he smiled. Gorakhpur, February 10th, 1971. On hearing that Prabhupada wanted to preach in Gorakhpur, Hanuman Prasad Poddar, eminent head of the Gita Press publishing company, offered one of his properties, a two-story house, his former residence, known as Krishna Niketan. Mr. Poddar, who was bedridden in another house in Gorakhpur, had first met Prabhupada in 1962, and he appreciated Prabhupada's mission. When Prabhupada received permission to use the Krishna Niketan, he acted quickly. It was not proper, he said, that the deities of Radha and Krishna he had brought from Calcutta had been packed away in a trunk after the Arada Kumbh Mela. They had already been worshipped, so their worship should not be stopped. The deities have to be installed tomorrow, he said, and put Kausalya and Nanda Kumar in charge of the preparations. Seeing that Nanda Kumar and Kausalya needed more help, Prabhupada called for all his disciples, and soon 20 American devotees were scurrying around, preparing for the next day's festival. Prabhupada directed the devotees in cleaning the temple room from ceiling to floor, and in building the altar. He asked Himavati to donate her fanciest sari, which he hung like a curtain before the table that was to be the deity's altar. The altar needed a backdrop, he said, and while Kausalya stood on the table, he handed her pieces of colored fabric to arrange against the wall. The backdrop completed, Prabhupada took a rug a devotee had bought in Allahabad and placed it over the table altar. That night, Prabhupada surveyed the temple room. "Oh, it is very nice," he said. He retired to his room, and 2 devotees stayed up all night, sewing clothes for Radha and Krishna. The next morning, the deities were placed on the altar, and the devotees resumed their worship, offering them prasadam and arati 6 times a day. Well, they would have offered them bhoga. You don't offer prasadam to the deities. The devotees were living in an ISKCON temple atmosphere for the first time since they'd arrived in India. And their lives became regulated and secure. The weather warmed, and the devotees, many of whom had exhausted their health in Allahabad, felt relief. The Gorakhpur temple was situated on several acres of agricultural land outside the city. It was a peaceful place. During the day, Prabhupada would rest as the sunshine came through the window and warmed his body. In the evenings, guests would come for kirtan and Prabhupada's lecture. Speaking on the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada referred repeatedly to Sridhar Swami's commentary from the 12th century. From the 12th century, Sridhar Swami. He's like the original Vaishnav commentator on the Bhagavatam. Sridhar Swami said that simply by chanting, without any regulative principles, one becomes liberated. So how is that? Sridhar Swami replies also that there are regulative principles. The idea is that chanting of the holy name is so powerful that it can immediately liberate the chanter. But because we're prone to fall down again, therefore they're regulative principles. Morning, noon, and evening, we should daily chant Hare Krishna mantra with faith and devotion. By doing this, one can avoid volumes of miserable conditions of life simply by chanting Hare Krishna. So one should be so much careful and faithful. You should know that as soon as you are chanting, Krishna is dancing on your tongue. Therefore, how much careful and respectful we should be. So Prabhupada's continuing his speaking about Sridhar Swami. Each night, Prabhupada would take the commentaries of Sridhar Swami as his text. So Sridhar Swami gives this example that without knowing that there's a very nice medicine, a man takes to so many husbands, many thousands of medicines, Similarly, the great stalwart leaders of religious principles, without knowing this Hare Krishna mantra, take so many troublesome ritualistic ceremonies. Actually, there's no need. The whole thing is, Srila Swami is giving the stress very strongly that you can simply chant Hare Krishna mantra without understanding any ritualistic ceremonies. Sridhar Swami's commentary was filled with quotations from various scriptures about the supreme benefit of chanting the holy names of Krishna. So Prabhupada continues. Then Sridhar Swami says, Akila Cheshtita. That means that any endeavor for pushing on Krishna's glories, that is as good as chanting the holy name. When you go out for canvassing, for pushing on this movement, people might think that you are not chanting. But suppose you are canvassing for a life member. That topic is also as good as chanting Hare Krishna mantra, because it is Akila Cheshtitam. One's life must be dedicated simply for Krishna's service. Speaking before his Indian audiences, Prabhupada also told about his preaching in the West. One evening, he gave a personal history describing how his spiritual master on their first meeting had immediately told him to preach Lord Chaitanya's message to the English-speaking world. So I guess who's the speaking now? Someone just starts speaking. Huh? Oh, okay, it's Prabhupada, yeah. At that time, I argued with them that we're a dependent nation, and who's going to hear about our message? So he defeated my argument. Yes, he was a learned scholar. So what I was a tiny boy. So I agreed that I was defeated. Prabhupada laughed softly. Prabhupada told about his business years in Allahabad and how he again met his spiritual master and became initiated. He told of starting back to Godhead in 1944, of taking sannyas, and of finally traveling to America in 1965. He mentioned his struggles in New York City and how the first boys had joined him when he started his movement in a storefront on 2nd Avenue. So practically we began work from 1968. In 1966 I started, but in 67 I became very much sick. So I came back to India, and again I went there in 1968. Practically the whole propaganda work began vigorously from 1968, 68, 69, 70, and this 71. So 3-4 years, all these branches have grown up, and now practically throughout the whole continent of Europe and throughout America, they know what is Hare Krishna movement due to our propaganda. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Would you mind getting the new camera and what I actually need is the